As-salaam wa-alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome to Year 6 of the 17 Verses podcast. I'm your host, Maher Haq. In this podcast, we take a small selection from the Quran every day and recite it to you in plain English, so you can get a small slice of God's word while you go about your day. By averaging 17 verses per day, we're able to break the Quran down into manageable pieces and finish it in 1 year. If you enjoy the podcast, please help spread the word. Tell your friends and family, subscribe in iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you get your podcasts, and write us a review. Show notes and a text episode can be found at 17verses.com. That's the numbers 17verses.com. Today's selection is from Surah 27, An-Naml, or the Ants, verses 15 through 44. These verses cover the story of Prophet Sulaimãn, or Solomon, on whom God bestowed much wisdom, as well as power over jinns, men, birds, ants, and the wind. It tells the story of the Hoopoe bird, which brought Solomon news of the Queen of Sheba, the communications between Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, and her eventual embrace of God. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. We bestowed knowledge on David and Solomon. They both said, "Praise be to Allah, who has exalted us above many of his believing servants." Solomon succeeded David. He said, "O my people, we have been taught the language of birds and given all sorts of things. This is indeed an evident grace from God." An army put together for Solomon was comprised of jinns, men, and birds. They were all kept under strict discipline. Once, in an expedition, he was marching with his army when they came across a valley of ants. One of the ants said, "O ants, get into your habitations, lest Solomon and his army crush you under their feet without even noticing it." So Solomon smiled, laughing at its statement, and said, "O my Lord, inspire me to render thanks for your favors, which you have bestowed on me and on my parents, to do such good deeds that will please you, and admit me by your mercy among your righteous servants." He took a roll call of the birds and said, "I do not see the Hoopoe. Where is he? How could he be absent? I will certainly punish him severely, or even slay him, if he does not offer me a strong reason for his absence." The Hoopoe, which did not take long in coming, said, "I have found out that which you do not know. I have brought you reliable information about the people of Sheba. I found a woman ruling over them. She has been given everything, and she possesses a magnificent throne. Further, I found out that she and her people prostrate themselves before the sun instead of Allah. Shaitan has made their deeds fair-seeming to them, and thus turned them away from the right way. So they have no guidance to prostrate themselves before Allah, the one who brings to light all that is hidden in the heavens and the earth and knows exactly what you hide and what you reveal. Allah, there is none worthy of worship but He. He is the Lord of the mighty throne." Solomon said, "Soon we shall find out whether what you say is true or false. Go and deliver to them this letter of mine, then turn aside and wait for their answer." The queen said, "O my chiefs, a very important letter has been delivered to me. It is from Solomon, and it begins with the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Merciful. It reads, 'Do not be arrogant against me, and come to me in complete submission as Muslims.'" Then she said, "O chiefs, let me hear your advice, for I make no decision without your counsel." They replied, "We are a valiant and mighty nation. You are the commander, so consider what you will command." The queen said, "When the kings invade a town, they ruin it and debase its honorable people, and thus they always do. Therefore I shall send them a present and see with what reply my envoys return." When the envoys of the queen came to Solomon, he said, "Do you want to provide me wealth? What Allah has given me is far more than what He has given you. Rather, it is you who exult in your present. Go back to your people. If your people do not submit, we will march against them with such an army which they shall never be able to face, and we shall drive them out of their land, humbled and disgraced." Later on, when Solomon heard that the Queen of Sheba was coming in submission, he asked, "O my chiefs, which of you can bring to me her throne before they come to me in submission?" A powerful one from the jinns said, "I will bring it to you before you adjourn your court, and most surely I have the necessary strength, and I am trustworthy." One person who had knowledge of the book said, "I can bring it to you in the twinkling of an eye." As soon as Solomon saw the throne placed before him, he exclaimed, This is by the grace of my Lord to test me, whether I am grateful or ungrateful. Anyone who is grateful, surely his gratitude is a gain for his own soul. And anyone who is ungrateful should know that surely my Lord is free of all needs and generous. Then he said, disguise her throne for her so that we may see whether she recognizes it or she is one of those who cannot recognize the truth. So when the queen arrived, she was asked, is your throne like this? She replied, it is just the same. Even before witnessing this miracle of bringing my throne here, we had been given the knowledge that Solomon was not only a king, but also a prophet of God, and we had become Muslims. Other deities whom she worshipped besides God had prevented her from believing, for she belonged to an unbelieving folk. Then she was asked to enter the palace. When she saw its floor, she thought it was a pool of water, so she tucked up her skirts, uncovering her legs. Solomon said, it is a palace whose floor is smoothly paved with glass. At this, she exclaimed, O my Lord, I have indeed wronged my soul. Now I submit myself in Islam with Solomon to God, the Lord of the worlds. Amin. Concerning the parable of the ants, quote, the ant, to outward appearances, is a very small and humble creature. In the great pomp and circumstance of the world, it may be neglected or even trampled on by people who mean it no harm. Yet by its wisdom, it carries on its own life within its own sphere, unmolested, and makes a useful contribution to the economy of the world. So there is room for the humblest of people in the spiritual world. The counterpoint to the position of the humble ant is the position of a great king like Solomon. He prays that his power and wisdom and other gifts may be used for righteousness and for the benefit of all around him. The ant being in his thoughts, we may suppose that he means, particularly in this prayer, that he may not even unwittingly tread on humble beings in his preoccupation with the great things of the world. The righteousness which pleases the world is often very different from the righteousness which pleases Allah. Solomon prays that he may always take Allah's will as his standard rather than the standards of men. Also, a quick note about the hoopoe bird. Quote, the hoopoe is a light, graceful creature with elegant plumage of many colors and a beautiful yellow crest on its head, which entitles him to be called a royal bird. Thank you. This concludes today's episode of the 17 Verses Podcast. I hope that this selection helps increase your understanding of the Holy Quran just a little bit. If you like the podcast, you can subscribe in iTunes or Stitcher and write us a review. Or you can grab the RSS feed and put it into your own podcast app. The show notes, including a text version of this episode, can be found by going to 17verses.com. That's the numbers 17, VERSES.com. Thank you, and be well.